Recording in progress. Just a little digital voice. Hi. So, in theory, this will be somewhere in the middle of like a bunch of other episodes of this, but secretly, it's my first test show. I just realized my hood's inside my coat. Um, and so I'll probably have my shit like way down by the time you see this. But as it is right now, we're just going to play along and see how it goes. So this is the maiden voyage for my podcast, which is basically Stephen Has Questions, which comes down to I know a lot of really interesting people, and I'm just perpetually fascinated by passions and the things that they enjoy. And tonight we have my best friend Nathan, my bestest friend, as he changed it on my phone, Nathan, who in addition to putting up with my bullshit and being the drummer for Stoneburner, um, also has like a real job where he does like major money things with advertising and companies and stuff, but we're not talking about that. But manages also to fill his life with video games and lots of tabletop games and just really manages to live it very fully, which I think is exceptionally remarkable. He's built his own video game cabinets and painted all of his figures and stuff. So, welcome Nathan to my show. This is where we rearrange the shows like what was it the first show of the series. We're going to show it in the middle, just like Firefly, because it worked out really well for them.
Well, you kind of ruined the secret. You could have probably, if you hadn't told anybody, maybe just maybe you could have got away with no one ever knowing that.
I'd like to think that it's going to it'll be noticeable. You know, I'd like to think that the production values will slowly go up as I get a better feel for this, and so you know, I'll probably I don't know.
No, they're all going to be spectacular.
Oh,
So
I think so. Ultimately, really though, it just comes down to the person, and you know, I think one of the things that makes me so deeply attracted to you is the fact that you give a shit about and you enjoy the things that you enjoy, which is I'd love to say that that's a very common thing, but it really isn't. A lot of people get like kind of steamrolled by life and don't make it a point of finding those things.
I,
So,
I've often wondered if it's a matter of, I don't know, do some people just get lucky? Is it a personality thing? I mean, for me, it's always been a real simple concept. I mean, I fall in love constantly. I mean, you know, throughout any given year, I'll stumble upon something, you know, something that makes me, you know, I'm a very excitable person. So something that just makes me, you know, borderline irrational. Like this is fantastic. Everyone needs to, you know, see this, talk about it. Like, oh, great, he's got a new thing, and you know, tinker with whatever it is, you know, until the next exciting, you know, something that, you know, catches your attention. And that's never really been a concerted, like it's never been like a intentional thing. It's always just sort of been how life goes. So I don't know. It's a sad idea to me to think that everybody isn't, you know, going through their years in such a fashion.
what do you remember? What the first thing you, or not the first, but one of the earliest things that you were just incredibly passionate about, like that you were like, well, this is going to be something I that resonates with me. It's something that speaks to me.
I do, but it sounds very, very trite. When I was a kid, I never was taught to ride a bicycle, which sounds really sad, but I was never taught to ride a bicycle. And one of my neighbors had one, and one day, you know, he was like soccer practice or something. His parents were taking him, and I asked, "Hey, can I borrow your bike?" And uh, that afternoon, I taught myself to ride a bike, and I, you know, kept at it and kept at it, and I got, you know, pretty pretty good at it, and doing all the bitchin' tricks that your neighborhood 8, 9 year olds are doing. Check out this bitchin' wheelie, type thing.
Big jumps.
Oh yeah, they were sweet, sweet jumps, inches even. And I kind of got absolutely enthralled to the point, I talked my parents into, getting me a bike, and that was literally like years of my life, like every single day. That is what I was doing. I was around on a bike, and it started to take different forms because kids have fantastic imaginations, and they could turn something into anything. And I remember first time I tried to my parents, they got a new VHS tape recorder, and they were going to throw away the old Betamax one, and I said, well, can I have it? And so I'm tinkering around with this thing, and I tried to set it record something, and instead in the middle of the night it recorded this cartoon. And I'd never seen anything like it before. It was this show called Robotech, and it blew my mind. It was it wasn't anything like it was terribly dubbed, a Japanese show, and but I'd never seen anything like it before. And in these episodes, they had these guys, they would ride motorcycles and then would transform into their suits, and all of a sudden the bikes would turn into their suits and they'd be flying around. So I'm pretty sure for a solid summer there, I was no longer just riding a bike. I was riding, the motorcycle. I was transforming, and as
Oh, we had a
as
whole we had a whole G-force thing that we had going on with me and the other folks that I rode bikes with. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the cool thing about all that stuff is you're a kid, so you can make anything, anything.
so during the bike years, it wasn't really just bicycling. It was okay, well, right here you're biking, but here now you're playing Robotech or whatever you're doing, and it just keeps morphing and turning into a new thing until I don't know. That was probably the years leading up to middle school. But yeah, it's one of the first times. It's one of those things that doesn't sound like much, and it's very trite to try and describe, but at the time it was everything. At the time it was
No, no,
yeah.
well, first of all, I do want to say that when you segued over to the VCR story, I was a little disappointed because I was expecting you to tell me about how you were somehow merging the bicycle and the VCR. But
Oh no, it'd be ridiculous. That wasn't until middle school when,
right,
it was right.
do you see? I mean, I see it. Robotech and stuff like that is such a gateway drug for stuff that you're still doing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I seriously doubt there was anything conscious about it. I think that a lot of it was just the accidental shit that happens inside of one's mind of you have that little bit of influence, the little like minor hint that just taps in the back of your brain and plants a seed, and over the years it turns into other things, and it definitely it played a role. I just don't know if I could fully articulate to what extent, because I learned from stuff like that of all sorts of stuff. I remember I was watching that cartoon that made me, first think, wow, that's a great example. One of the first things that made me go, wow, space is cool. Like, wow, check out all the, stars and spaceships, and some of it's real and some it's not or whatnot. And it's kind of weird how you get from point A to point B. But I remember, in late like elementary school, the different thoughts in my head of my dad had this bookshelf, and on the bottom of the shelf at the very far left book was Cosmos by Carl Sagan. And I remember looking at it as a kid and be like, well, that's dad stuff. That's boring. Like, and along comes Robotech and, the one, spaceships and such. And then I would go check it out again, and suddenly it's not boring anymore. I'm like, oh, it's space. It's cool. That's where the aliens were, and, stuff like that, which yet another gateway fork that, turns into more things and more things. But no, science, space, technology, even whether it was, real science fiction, whether parts of that stuff that were science fiction at the time and now are a hell of a lot less science fiction. But I mean, no, it absolutely played a part in a lot of the things that I later became enthralled with. I'm just not sure of if we could draw a map back to all of those tiny little influences, it would make the world's most insane forking tree with it'd be cool. But
One of the things I've noticed within the industrial scene is that people like Cyanotic, for example, who are more closer to your age than mine, um, grew up on Terminator versus Star Wars, and we have a different sonic aesthetic. Like there are different sounds that I think resonate with me in a way that are less the big mechanical sounds versus like some of the more like the lightsaber sound or I honestly like the way the voices when they're talking back and forth through the space radio sounds, so it's interesting to see like it does shape your aesthetic. I think that the younger people growing up on anime as they age, that's programming your brain to find certain things appeal or not, or scary or whatever. I,
if you looked at the all the little subgenres of various musical scenes, I would love to take a poll of exploring that one of like, you played a lot of cowboys and Indians, didn't you? Kind of like, oh, you definitely grew up on like, like way too many. Like grandpa was constantly in the next room watching too many World War II documentaries, like stuff like that. How much of that was like direct influence and how much of it was even conscious?
yeah, well, I mean, I think it's with those passions, you're just looking for the thing that's igniting you, you know, on as many levels as possible at any given time. It's like it's not only is it just aesthetically appealing, but also is it getting you thinking and is it immediately getting you playing what if,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is cool. And I think there's for a lot of people there's kind of a weird sort of like, well, now that I'm older and I have money and I'm stable, I can now buy a whole bunch of stuff that I wish that I had when I was a kid. But and that's cool, but that almost more seems like it's less about passion and more about because I can. Because it's like how much are you doing with that stuff? And that's one of the things it's like you are doing stuff with all of this. Like, you go to your house and there's all the board games on the shelves that you actually play.
Well,
Um,
there's a running joke in like board game circles that you'll hear over and over again that it's actually kind of two hobbies. Hobby number one is collecting board games. Hobby number two is the actual playing of them. And I'll totally throw myself under the bus that I am not, immune to either one of them. The collecting board game side of me, that's almost like, hey, this one's for you, 12-year-old Nathan that always wanted those games and, couldn't afford them or, didn't have the exposure. This one's for you, kid. The actual playing of them, the whether it's, I have different like board game groups. I have like different like personality types that you're going to kind of mesh more with this type of game. There are some people that don't have the attention for like my favorite types of games. Literally, a game might last for 5 hours, like straight on a single game. And there are people that just do not have the attention span for that. Could not do it, and even if they could, they wouldn't have any interest in it. So you find, the different groups of people, then find what resonates with them, what they would enjoy, and just I guess tap into the different interests. But no, that one's for me. That one, the actual playing, that one's for 41-year-old Nathan.
Um, it's funny, I was thinking about the whole collecting thing, and it's like, I am not by any means wealthy, but every once in a while something will will. And in general, I find the idea of collecting very weird to have things that you don't do stuff with. I think it's always a weird thing for me. But then I have also, right there, I have my gauntlet cabinet, which I play once every, blue moon. But I have it and it's there. So that, it's like, that's for 12-year-old Steve and cool. Right out.
That one's for little Steven, right?
Yeah, yeah. But but it's there and I know it's there. And I could play it, with an emulator or whatever, but damn it. So
I don't know.
I get it. Getting doing it in mass, it's just
I'll always, I never want to knock anyone else's hobbies or whatnot because we're all into our own things. And quite frankly, as long as you're excited about something, then more power to you. I mean, that's fantastic. But I do have to tease, some of my friends. Like I have, one friend that his whole thing, he, as an adult, he's gotten really, really into, I think it's called, I'm getting apologies if I totally botch this and someone's like listens later and they're like, that's not how you pronounce it. I think it's called Safubi or something like that. It's basically a very specific type of like, they're toys, but they're like, handmade like cast thing and huge like thing like Japan and they're rare. People like artists will make like a handful of them every year, and people are paying thousands of dollars for these things. And he collects them, and he has like glass cases in his house filled with them. And I don't get it because I'm looking at all of this, and I'm the part of it that bothers me. I'm like, okay, well, awesome, that's so cool. Oh, that's the one you just got. It's cool. Well, what do you do with it? Like I want to play with it. I want, like, well, I see these things and it looks like oversized versions of like, all right, well, what game can I put that into? And and like,
Yeah.
like
Oh man, I remember when I was a kid and we had the game Car Wars, and they released a version of it that had instructions on how to redraw the maps so you could play it with Matchbox cars.
nice.
That was really fucking cool. Well, one of the people I'm going to have on collects stuff in that way, so I'm going to talk to them about that and kind of try and get a feel for it because yeah, it's such a strange part of it to me. I don't understand the point of having things if you're not using them, but clearly it makes them happy and that's awesome. Um, and I guess part of it, this is I want to understand the why, how is that, because to me, I feel like if I bought it, I would just put it over there on the wall or on the shelf or whatever, and there it would be.
Yeah, is this like a oh, I've never delved very deep into this. I wonder, and if I did, you'd have to find somebody with a lot of self-awareness. I want to know, like, what is it about that collecting? Are you truly getting consistent joy from it, or is it like a one hit, put it on a shelf, and then, well, that excitement's gone. Now I need to move on to the next one kind of thing? Does it scale in any way? As you collect more and more and more, does it get more exciting, less exciting?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, then there's stuff that like Donna still has all of her Star Wars figures, but not only does she have her Star Wars figures, she still has the guns, because that's how she is. So, but like they just live in a big Darth Vader case on one of the shelves. And that's the kind of thing. It's like, well, I mean, they're not of any real value, but they're valuable to her. And so that makes sense to me. Or I've got, things here and I've got my stuffed animals I had when I was a kid because
Well,
you
well, is
can't
there a
throw away
difference?
stuffed animals. They'll be sad.
Well, then they might, hopefully they won't be vengeful. But I think there's a line to be drawn, the difference between sentimental value
Right.
and
Yeah.
like there's a difference between the thing that you're holding on because it was a part of the past versus the thing you're actively still acquiring in the spirit of collecting. I don't know. I kind of draw a distinction between the two.
I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know if it happened in down where you are. Nathan lives in Atlanta. But up here in Bel Air, Maryland, um, last year, I think there was a big run on cups. Like I don't remember what kind, like igloo cup, cooler cup. There was a name for them, and you could get like,
Oh,
you know what I'm
uh,
talking about.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what they're called, but S- Sarah, my wife, was looking for one of it, and when I heard about this, I'm just like, wait, what? Like this.
Yeah, apparently people were lined up in the snow in the winter at Target in the morning to go get these cups. And I have to like, you know, they put this intense, it's incredible value on it. And so you have to wonder about after that. So after they bought this, because you put all this effort into it, do they use the cup?
Right.
Yetis, right? No, there's another name for them. But
No, there's one in this house. I can't remember what it's called, but it was it was the most bizarre thing when I first saw this of because Sarah was showing it to people like friends and our daughter, and she's, "Where did you find that?" And I'm just like, "What am I missing?" Like, what am
yeah, yeah, and so now. So, like, if the kid took it to school, like, apparently that was a thing too. Like, kids would take these things to schools, and if they had the wrong kind, and I get that if you're a kid and everybody's, there's a lot of that
I
sort of
think
thing
I
going
think
on. But
every
as an
generation had like
adult,
yeah, every generation had like a different version of that
what
or
if Joe
version.
brought the wrong cup to work?
Right.
And and so now here we are a year on. Is it still sitting hallowed on its shelf where you don't even look at it because you don't want to pull any of the color out of it with your eyes? Um, or is it now reliquated to, in the corner with the box of the vomit covered sleepy telephone, kids telephone and that kind of thing, like it's just the stuff that you have that's kind of like, wow, this meant a lot to me. And now my kid threw up on it and I'm keeping him in that box there. And
Right. Another one of the, how does this, what is the meaning or sentimentality,
yeah,
morph as years go on?
yeah. Like, did you learn something from that?
I
Or- So
don't
like,
know.
okay,
You lived through the Beanie Baby craze of the 90s. That was a fantastic example of this because all through it, it was kind of this centralized embodiment of all of the above. Because depending on who you were talking to, there was some people, it was entirely a conversation about economics. And I knew people that
we're so much, man.
these are going to be worth something, one of these. And to other people, it was all about, the obnoxious collection, this is, they just loved the collection, and other people, I knew some people that actually played with them, which I think that's what they were created
Oh
for.
yeah. So now here's a weird question. You've got like I said, you got a real adult job and doing computers and numbers and are interfacing with the rest of the world. Um, do you feel like any of these other passions that you like Robotech or like any of those things that you did in your youth, if they not so much informed what you did maybe, but how you do it now, like do you, yeah, being in games, do you see like places where you have used a trick that you picked up in a game or whatever to interact with somebody, or seeing it as a game changing it how you interact with people or with what you do?
Probably more subconsciously than, consciously. Got a funny answer to that. It's ridiculous, and some might argue it's not important. Some might argue, well, that's completely unnecessary, and I would say that they're absolutely wrong. But plucked straight from my childhood to this day, and for over really 15 plus years now at work. Every work computer I've ever had, I keep two MP3s on my desktop. They're very integral to my day-to-day job. One is the Mission Impossible theme music. It was when shit's getting real, solving the problem or whatnot. You need
Yeah, yeah, of course.
And the other one would be the A-Team theme music for,
Oh,
with the
yeah, yeah, could
Victoria.
be sax in there. I think that would be another good.
That's a whole new speed. Maybe my work life would take a whole new shape, if I added that one in there. But no, that's the victory moment or whatnot. But no, those were those were plucked straight from my youth, and they still have very important meaning. Anyone in any of my departments over the years has absolutely known what those meant. But no, there's you I think that it's pretty much impossible not to let those things inform you as you go along because I could almost see it as like knocking over dominoes. When watching those episodes of Robotech kind of was not even 6 degrees away, but it was eventually had a certain aesthetic, a certain like level of cool, a certain level of the way that it sounded, the way that, it all led me to like I remember in very early middle school, uh first hearing or first hearing electronic music for the first time, or it was literally the Hackers soundtrack. This was and the first time I heard it, and I remember thinking to myself, this was at a time when America didn't have a language for this yet. It wasn't in our mainstream quite yet, on the heels of grunge music and, alternative thing going on. And all of a sudden, along comes what at the time was being dubbed electronica. And so it was the first, entering into it was no longer just this thing you saw a few tracks on like 120 minutes, or in the middle of the night, sort of thing. Now it's like middle of the day. I'm hearing this, and the first time I hear it, I literally think to myself, it's computer music, like in my head. I'm like, it was very impactful, but that was only a few degrees away from, the Robotech origins, even if it might not seem it, on face value, which that led to interest in other electronic music genres, which that led interest into other cyberpunky things, which also had their roots back in, some of that anime. And I mean, it's all, again, just that sprawling tree over and over and over again. I mean, whether it's from a fashion standpoint, whether it's from even just sitting there looking at, some of the dumbest, silliest things. Like I remember and from that film watching one of the Matthew Lillard's character, he had a backpack on, and I'm sitting here. It was the first time that in my brain there was a switch flipped of backpacks are the thing that you carry to school to carry your books to now all of a sudden, wait, you can decorate those? Backpacks can be cool. I
Right.
want to that. And it turned into like the next thing you know, I'm sitting there like wrapping wire around, my, backpack and trying to turn it into a whole thing. And yeah, I don't know. I like the way you phrased it though. It's one of those thing that informs the next thing because it's a good way to put that.
Yeah. Let's see. So sure there's other what are you currently particularly jazzed about that's like the new what's the flavor of the month?
Oh,
Like some new thing that you were aware of.
well, I mean, it's a little mundane, but new to me. Sitting over on a table about 20 feet behind me, the other day, I decided I deserve a new toy. And so I decided I was going to build a new gaming machine. Well, over the years, as technology advances and games get more and more realistic or whatnot, so does heat. So does the amount of heat that games put out. And I just decided, screw it. I'm a grown ass man with the healthy career and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to build that machine where no matter what game I go out and buy, I can crank it to ultra, whatever video settings and not give it any thought. And as I was giving a little bit of thought on how to build this machine, it occurs to me, I'm like, okay, this thing's I need to do something about the cooling. And so my first foray into liquid cooling systems, around around how to keep this thing from actually cooking itself. So been toying with that, which
I'm telling you, you could put a Chromebook in there and just connect it.
or connected GeForce now, right? Right.
You don't have to worry about upgrading it.
Right, right. No, you're not wrong. But no, as with most of little hobbies and things I tinker with, I can't just leave it at will this work? And it's kind of set down this weird rabbit hole of anyone who spends any amount of time with me. I mean, it turns into the thing you start poking fun at where I'm like physically incapable of not looking up every little thought that pops into my head of how does this work? And how does this work? What is this? What is the most optimal way you're like, what is the most optimal way to do this and that? So I have in the last 2 days literally burnt like an absurd amount of time um, looking into optimal methodologies of airflow, which is so lame. But
But
like,
I see. I don't think so at all. I think that that shit's cool. Like I don't know. And maybe that's the problem with the country.
well, like today I got hyper fixated for literally about an hour over a single question. So with these air coolers, they have, a radiator that, like goes in, comes back out, so it's a constant circulation. But I start thinking about these things that it came with some fans on top of it. And, it noted that, they can either A, sit on one way to push air through it to try and cool the radiator. But I start thinking, well, hold on a minute, which is more efficient? Pushing air into it to cool, but what about pulling air out of it? Hold on, can you do both? Is that a supported thing? Is that like are people doing that today? Is this like, is it more efficient? Is it a little more? Is it, is something that, is it worth it? Is one of those things of, yeah, you could, but you'll get that 1% extra,
Mhm.
heat efficiency. And I was down the total rabbit hole just trying to figure out and like, like learn about how this works. And that's pretty much
Oh,
everything
he
with
got a
me.
thermodynamics degree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So probably 2 years from now, somehow this turns into the most obscene. I would be giving, some
I have
dissertation.
destroyed Newton's third law, and my machine runs great.
Right. Right. I mean, you joke, but I think that I've built entire careers on an entire career on pretty much the same principle because my entire career was an accident. I've told my kid, for example, like there's a lot to be said for, hard work and dedication. I mean, that type of thing is important, but I always told her, I'm like, do not give me too much credit, for a lot of the things that I've done in life because I got lucky. I got lucky that for whatever reason I turned into a very curious person, and that curiosity,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
the curiosity manifested itself in a constant desire, a constant like, well, how does that work? And how does that work? And eventually you get boredom, add a little bit of boredom on top of that of, okay, well, I already learned all that stuff. Well, now I need to learn the next thing. And sooner or later, I eventually figured out that, wait a minute, you guys are going to pay me for this?
Right, yeah.
So,
Christian on our record label, Cop International. I was talking to him one time, and he said something I agree with, and I think is incredibly important. He's like, "I don't sign bands, I sign people." And I was talking to my buddy Ethan earlier today about all of this, and I was like, I have brought people into the band because even if they weren't fully invested in knowing how to play whatever it was they were trying to do, but they were really interested. Like there was this one guy we had brought in, he was like every month he was learning some new instrument or figuring something out with that. And I was like, cool, that's the kind of thing I want. And that's part of, one of the reasons that you're in the band is for the same reason. And I think that again, that kind of passion and curiosity, it goes such a long way in a real world setting because you want somebody that's like, yes, they may know how to do it, but are they keeping up with it? Are they figuring out new ways of dealing with these problems, or are they just kind of, yeah, I know how to fix it, sure, because it's what I do, you know?
right, right. I don't know. I mean, it's usually also my experience going to be the curious people, the excitable people that are eventually going to find not even just the way to solve the problem or the way to do the thing, but they're going to be the ones that find the interesting thing, the fun thing, the sometimes even just the funny thing. They're
Also, that passion and that interest motivates the people that are around you. So it's not even just, yeah, it might be the funny thing or a fun way to do something, but also that's the kind of thing that the people that you work with stay helps them stay engaged, and it just doesn't become just like a whole. I don't know. Morale matters, and that's the sort of thing that comes with that. Like I we had this one dude that played drums with us for a while, and at one point I was just like, "All right, Eeyore, we get it," and he just wasn't fun to have around, and consequently we didn't feel that bad about getting rid of him. Um, whereas you're fantastic to have around because you're always onto some new thing, um, and you can always see how other things apply.
I remember when I was 18, my favorite bands at the time, they lost their drummer. And they mentioned, online, this is Live Journal or something at the time, mentioned online that, they were looking for, like, okay, we need a new drummer. And I got it in my head. I'm like, I want to be a drum. It was the first time I'd ever touched a pair of drumsticks. And I remember, mentioned this to him, and I remember just it blew my mind when I was talking to him, where I said something about, yeah, but I'm not very skilled. It's going to take me a while. And he says, man, honestly, I'll settle for the person who can keep a beat okay, but is really fun to have around. The really fun to hit the road with, over the super amazing hardcore drum, absolutely perfect in every manner, but it's just a real pain in the ass to deal with. And at the time, I thought that's really nice thing to say. It's a really, cutesy, concept, but I'm sure you don't mean it. Now I'm like, oh, he meant it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he meant it.
No, like it really, that kind of shit matters, like particularly when you're locked in a van for days.
Right, right. I mean, hell, being stuck in a van for, so many weeks. Eventually I'm going to start getting on my own nerves, much less anyone else. So yeah, that starts to matter a whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Back when those little iPod minis came out, I knew this guy who has a band, and they're pretty successful. And so he made it a point of buying them for everybody in the band because like, being able to be alone when you're still around people is a
Right.
huge skill. Like you can't get bored and annoy everybody else with it. And
I learned from you the superpower of, sometimes just the value in, I'm gonna put my headphones in for a little while.
yeah, yeah, and sometimes it's not even about anybody else other than you. Everybody has their own rhythm, like rhythm. Mine's weird because I get these tired moments throughout the day because of how my brain shit works. So it's just like I know that's coming. So I'm gonna go sleep. So for 5 minutes, just reset everything, and now I can not be an asshole to my friends. So
Sure, right, exactly.
all right, so we're basically out of time. I'm afraid we're out of time, so I'm going to have to bump you to next week. So thank you so much for doing my inaugural thing, and yeah, I think it was nice trusting that you were going to be interactive enough to make all of this work. So thank you
Good
for
times. It was good times. Appreciate you.
all right. Take care.
Cheers.
Commercial time. So today I wanted to make you aware of Stoneburner. This is a record I did a number of years ago called Apex Predator. Stoneburner is well, it started out with this idea of kind of what would dance music on Arrakis, on Dune sound like. And so I did a bunch of material with that, maybe 6 records, I think. And I realized that I'd kind of pushed it as far as I could go. Ironically, I just released a new record called Christ Knife with that style of music just because it's been long enough now that I can enjoy writing it again. But I decided I needed to start writing the industrial record that I've been promising I would make since I was a kid, and that ended up being this record here called Technology Implies Belligerence, based on well, not based on, but very, very influenced by Peter Watt's novel Blind Sight. So, yeah, if you're into industrial music, I'd like to think that this is kind of considerably better than your average Bears industrial music. It's still angry, it's still noisy as fuck, but it's. I feel like it's much more elevated. I feel like there's a lot of content that gets discussed. It isn't just, I don't know, it isn't built for dance floors. It was built to be music, and if you can dance to it, that's cool. But it's about talking about real things, talking about or telling stories or whatever. It's not limited to the whole cyber thing or what so many. Unfortunately, I feel like so many industrial bands do. So please, if you're into looking for industrial music, if you're into that sort of thing, yes, like Nine Inch Nails, please check it out. I'll tag some videos on at the end of this interview. I'm very excited. I have a new record coming out. Maybe if you're seeing this, it's already out. Called Post Industrial Occult, and my buddy Jim Marcus of Die Warsaw and Go Fight, and just his own badass self is mixing it and working with me on the production. So hopefully it'll be amazing. I think it'll be amazing. Maybe by the time this is out, you'll know or you'll have heard of it, and it is amazing. But I'm very proud of it, and again, I feel like it is taking industrial music and actually trying to bring back the art form. All right, so this is kind of a nice little, even though this will probably be like not at the end of it. This is technically the last one of these I'm shooting for this, and it's good because I had Nathan for the first one. He was my test subject. I'm also going to take a moment right now just to say, like, I've been inserting these commercials into things, so I'm going to do this one right now so it's out of the way. I also do, in addition to all the Stoneburner and Ego Likeness, I do all this solo stuff, and under my name, steveartarcher.bandcamp.com. I'll put some of the videos for it at the end. It's whatever the industrial version of singer-songwriter is. I don't know. I really have no idea what to call it, but I think it's pretty cool, and it's, yeah, so it's less angry, more emotive. I don't know, I guess. So we're back with Nathan, who's got a weird ass expression on his face. Um,
I was actually thinking very nice things about you just now. I was, it's a
Luckily,
good,
I've,
it's a good record,
but
and I was just like, I'll just let him do it, because it sounds. If I was to say nice things, it would sound too much like pandering. So I'll just keep my damn mouth shut.
I think anybody who knows me knows that I don't do pandering. I don't like pandering. Um, so I wouldn't stand for any of that here. Although a number of people have said some very nice things while doing this, and that's always very cool, and that's why I keep them around. Um, so it's actually been about 3 months since we last spoke via this, and in that time, I have now done 33 of these, 32 of these, something like that. A number of whom were brought in because you knew them. Our friend from the CDC and Amanda Madden of the Italian Vendettas,
The stabby people.
the stabby people. That one actually is, like you. I assume you'll be watching all of these. Best friend.
Hint, hint, wink, wink.
But even if you don't catch anything, both of those are really fascinating. And so thank you for putting me in touch with them. Although apparently, at least Amanda was a fan, so that's good too. But
No, I didn't. I knew you'd done a bunch of these. I didn't realize you'd done 30. Do you 33 of them? Is that including this one, or is this the 33rd?
this I don't know. It's a 33, 34, something like that. Does that one increment matter too much?
No, probably not. I guess you'd been mentioning doing these. I just didn't realize that you had done that many
I
like that.
hadn't intended to. I'd set out to do 25, and but it ended up opportunities kept coming up, and also at one point I realized I had like way too many band people, so I wanted to get enough other non-band stuff or non-artists, to kind of balance that out because like with most band stuff, it's an artist stuff. I know all the answers already. It's all process stuff. We all work more or less the same way. So and it just kind of gets into nuances, which is cool. But this is also about like there's so many other people that do besides musicians and artists. So
Well, if
I,
if the world was fair, I would suggest, hey, you should cut that in half, and create two, I don't know what you call it, seasons, two, collections or whatnot, and throw it out into the world. Number two, only after everyone else is caught on with your sheer level of brilliance and how one fascinating the run is, and they actually pay attention. Uh, isn't that usually the catch? Isn't that usually the gotcha anyway? Getting them
I
to
don't
pay
know.
attention?
My hope is that people will find this, and it's like when we bring a band opening for Ego or whatever. Like it's we hope that our fans will kind of know, well, if we're bringing them out, then it's because we like them and we think they're good and you like us, so check them out because we got good taste. So my hope is that um, people will watch enough of these that they'll get this thing. It's like, well, there's a reason I'm interviewing these people. They're interesting. There's something interesting going on with what they're doing, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure some people will skip around, but I mean, there really is like uh, I can't even do full justice to it. But a cook, a five-star cook, a chef, a career military guy who runs the infantry museum, and people who built their own cars and what else? Just all kinds of pretty amazing. A herpetology expert from Yale.
Okay, well, you got me there. I'm like, what? What's a herpetology? I'm like,
It's lizards.
is is what lizards?
Mhm.
Oh, well, maybe that's it. Not my area, which is why you're recording these, because so I can get caught up.
Yeah, yep, yep. Trying to think of who else. Um, yeah, but just like so many different types of folks. And I'm trying to like next one. I definitely want to get more people that are just kind of like haven't turned it into their career, but it's just a thing that they really enjoy doing. So like more I don't know, not gonna say less committed, but maybe like they just have a different approach to their passions instead of just
Sure, sure. I don't know. I wonder if that'd be more difficult to do or easier to do. Because I mean, there's always the question of there's the bullshit they told us all growing up, where, you're in high school and at some point some counselor, tells you some line about, well, pick the thing that, you love doing and, well,
give
that's
up
what you should
your
do.
life.
And I
Yeah.
think that's terrible advice, just like find the thing you love to do and let the rest of the world just beat it out of you.
Right. Let it eat you.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was talking to Tosh earlier about that, and I was just like, again, and as I've said multiple times on this, don't do what I do. It's not easy, and it's not, it's incredibly fun, but you have to have built this entire life to do it. It's not like something you can just kind of like, I'm going to be a full-time artist now and quit everything else. You don't have that infrastructure built, and you're not in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be real hard.
I mean, it's like earlier just this morning, I've been kind of redoing my office at home, and earlier this morning, Sarah sees my wife Sarah sees this stack of books sitting on my desk, and I mentioned that yeah, and I'm looking for a new bookshelf for that corner to put them in. She goes, "Oh, is that where all your workbooks are gonna go?" And I got really like strangely squirrely about it. I'm like, "No, no, 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 they're not workbooks. They're occupation." She's like, what? And I'm like, yes, okay, nothing I'm saying right now makes sense. I realize that, but I had to draw the delineation because, yes, these are books about what I do, but these are actually fun enough. These are actually cool enough that I don't want you associating them with work, because then, yeah, I will get things out of this for work. But the second they become workbooks, I'm like, now they suck. Like, so, like, there were this stack of I think one of them is called like red team field manual, blue team field manual. There was all these information security like like things like cheat sheets of sort of, like if you're doing penetration testing of, trying to, hack something, here's a bunch of all those things you might look up at some point, you might like, what was that again? Just quick reference. And yes, this pertains to my job, but don't let me figure that out. Like leave it on the subconscious level.
Yeah, I started just today writing up because I was thinking about like all the sketchbooks I do, and I use essentially the same system for making sketchbooks as I do for writing songs, as I do for other writing poetry and all these other things. Like I do them all in little bits and then build up all at once. And I started writing down the process for all of it because I was thinking this might actually be the thing to write about for a art person book. And one of the things I was saying about it is like, look, you can look at this as work, or you can look at this as I get to do this. And you need to look at it as I get to do this, and I'm excited about doing this way more than if you're looking at it as work, then you just shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
And so I think that sounds like pretty much exactly like what I was saying. It's like, yeah, the moment that the thing that you enjoy, not the moment, because I mean, yes, this stuff is work, it's our job, that's cool. But like, if you're not finding that endorphin hit in it and that excitement and all the parts of it that get you there,
It's gonna suck.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's actually a good beginning for this because you do some you do something that I think would drive me insane.
I'm surprised there's just one thing I do that drives you insane, but
Well, I'm talking about for a living, not just as
oh,
personal.
gotcha.
Um, like you're ostensibly you do network security essentially.
Uh,
That's kind of the big umbrella.
Say all things eventually lead back to there in some way, yeah.
But and that part I get, and that part I can certainly understand the appeal of. And from the if I was into coding, I can certainly see what like if I can see the appeal in the nerd like making stuff work thing. Um, the part that I think would drive me insane is not that, it is the extended part because you're like essentially the big boss for what you do at the place you work. So it's dealing with the incompetence or the other people and trying to get them to understand that, hi, we're doing this for your own good. This is the thing that we're doing for you. Uh,
That's probably the worst part of what I do.
right.
Like,
And, well, and that's kind of where I was going with this, which is how are you obviously have to find enough of joy in the other stuff in order to deal with that part of it.
so I do a lot of, I guess, my career, I do a lot of untraditional approaches to things, a lot of things that break the mold of corporate America, of like the way you're quote supposed to do it and or whatnot. And most of them are a ton of little things, but they work for me. Like the smallest, dumbest thing. And yet it makes all the difference in the world so much to the point. Like this is one of those, like, we're discussing this in my interview before I ever even accept a job, sort of thing. That is, I'll always skew my schedule. So I'll like start late morning and, go like early evening. It might sound trite, it might sound little, but there's a very, very important part of this. And the reason that I do that is it is the only way I've found that affords me a guarantee of certain hours in the day when everyone else fucks off and everyone else lets me, actually get any work done, actually put my head down and look at the problem, look at the issue, unpack whatever is going on, try to solve the thing, try to build the thing that without a ton of other people around that I either A, need to convince, to use your wording because it was accurate, convince this is for your own good, this is B, the more frustrating part is, when it's not even that it's only for your own good, but you will like this when you give it a chance. I mean, there was a situation a few weeks ago that I was talking to one of my coworkers about that I had to draw the parallel to when my daughter was 5 years old, and I tried to give her a blueberry muffin for the first time, and I was very excited. I don't know why, but I was like, "Oh, she's gonna love this. This is gonna be fantastic," you know. And then I'm like, "Ooh, you know, try this," and she's like, "I don't want it." I'm just like, what do you mean you don't want it? No, it's really good. You know, see, it's like, and she was like, I don't want it. It looks weird. And I hadn't quite learned that, you know, parental lesson about, you know, like power struggles with children yet or whatnot. You know, I hadn't learned that lesson. So on engages a 45-minute struggle of me like so at this point I'm not even sure it was about the blueberry muffin anymore. It was just one of those like eat it, you'll like it. And the weirdest thing happened when finally this teary-eyed child, you know, just I am the worst human being that ever existed. She finally tries it. And you can see on her face she likes it. And the weirdest thing happened in that moment where I was somehow madder that we could have saved the last 45 minutes. Here I am, so 20 plus years, you know, after that incident, and I still live it at least, you know, a few times a month. This is one of those like, you're gonna like this. It will make your life simpler. Stop complaining and just do the thing. I mean, if
I
only
know
all
more than you.
if only all things in this life could be as simple as a blueberry muffin. But no, it's a real struggle, and there that's the end user side of things. There's the other side of things too, where there's corporate America, you know, wherever you're always going to be filled with all sorts of different personalities, all sorts of, there's people. And there are fewer things more frustrating or infuriating, you know, than the colleague, you know, the fellow IT person, you know, or even just the, you know, the fellow coworker or whatnot that yeah, it's even forget the IT person, just the fellow other coworker that somehow convinces themselves that they know more than you do. You know, it's I don't know, like not to throw it out too broadly, but you almost wonder like how did this become a thing? Has this always been the thing, or is this like it feels like in recent years, more and more people sort of have this are conflating the notion of them having an opinion on something with them having expertise on something. I searched something on the internet for 90 seconds, which makes me on par with this expert who's, you know, spent the last, you know, 12 years of their lives dedicated to the thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's a definitely a point of frustration. So there are perks to, you know, my world, but that's definitely one of those things that hopefully you get to avoid more often than not.
You know, Don and I were talking about this recently because I was had a post that I made on Facebook about ADD stuff, and somebody was coming in and trying to like talk to me about their, you know, like they were approaching in this very like I know more than you sort of thing. And I could tell it's like you just recently got diagnosed with this and you are learning all of this stuff, and that's cool. But I've been on this ride since 1984, and you know, I have worked with people who have it. I've gone through my own shit with it and all this other stuff, and like it was just this very much one of those like I get that you're really feeling good about knowing, you know, like you're finally starting to feel like you know all of this stuff, and that's really cool. But yeah, it was just the argument was really strange, but it was definitely one of those like having to kind of like balance out the look. I know you don't think that you're pulling this whole Dunning-Kruger thing, but that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I usually at least want to give people the benefit of the doubt and just sort of assume that I'm like you pretty sure that you mean well with this
Right.
approach, but and which almost makes it more difficult because if somebody's just, you know, being a prick, you know, it makes it really simple to be like, all right, let's do this, you know, kind of
Right.
thing. But if you can tell it's coming from, you know, the good place, it's like, ah, shit, what's the nicest way possible to say? Like,
Yeah, I've gotten into that with like sound people at shows where I'm just like, please don't make me do this. Please don't. Please. I know more about how this is going to work than you. Please don't do it. Um, Yeah, no, it was funny because like she was really focusing on this. We need to make sure there's help available for all of these other people who can't, maybe they can't get it together enough to go see doctors and do all of these things. And I was like, well, here's the thing. That's the problem with when you have autonomy, that sometimes there are people who can't be fixed because we can't force them to get help.
Mhm.
That's part of the deal. It's like this is you, and we can't force you to change or do this stuff. So if they're not willing to do the work, because she was like, this whole post sounds very much like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm like, no, but it is saying you are responsible for dealing with your problem. Nobody else can fix it for you. Like you can reach out and ask for help, or take some of that help available. But if you're not willing to do that, so people, me saying, hey, here's how you can do these, here are all the steps to do this, does not take away from these people over here who don't have the ability to do those steps.
Right.
It just, for the people who can take the steps, like I can tell you how to drive a car, but if you don't have a car and you're not willing to get a license, I can't do anything with that. So,
Right, right. But both things can be true.
right, yeah, exactly, and so it's a very frustrating thing when you get into those kind of like, I know you don't want to see yourself as internalizing being a victim, but you're kind of doing that if you're not allowing your own, acknowledging your own ability to solve the problem and using it. So, but anyway, so that what we're talking about, I guess, is essentially then a necessary evil for being able to do the thing that you enjoy and that you're good at.
Right, right. I mean, that's a really, really good way to phrase that, to be honest, because I assure you, if I could, I wish that I could snap my fingers and all of us take the parts of our jobs or our day-to-days that you wish weren't there, crumple them up, throw them away. Like in an ideal world, I've joked for, almost 20 years now. I really wish somebody would pay to just lock me in a cold server room, leave me the hell alone, tell me what you need, and just let me do my damn job. I promise everyone will be super happy with the outcome here. Just don't let me or don't make me do fill in the blank of all the other crap, except it, corporate America is so fucked up. I love it. That's the second time that I've cursed and then immediately like, am I allowed to do? I'm like, Nathan, remember who you're talking to. Like, yeah, heavens to
Are you?
Betsy.
Oh my Lord!
Corporate America is fucked up in the sense that I will never ever understand. Are you familiar with the Peter principle? The concept of
He who has the Peter makes the rules now.
it's no continuous this notion of people continuously getting promoted to the point of incompetence. And I will never understand this corporate America thing where they keep wanting to, so this person's really, really good at what they do. So let's
Oh, we're going to.
like take them away from or further and further away from the thing that they're good at and put them in charge of other people that to get them to do it, except it's not a one-to-one application. I understand the train of thought there. I understand where the mentalities come from, but I think more often than not, at least in my experience in IT, and more often than not, it's a flawed concept because it makes the assumption that the same person that is going, really, really good at doing that thing is going to be equally good at teaching anyone around them to do it at that level to bring them up, and it's not even a matter of always a matter of technical prowess or ability to teach or anything like that. A lot of the time it's the harsh truth that you just kind of alluded to a minute ago, that it's the dirty little thing people don't want to say out loud, where I've over the years gotten really, really good at, I believe within pretty damn quick of meeting somebody, working with them for a little while, I can pretty much tell you exactly how good you're inevitably going to, land in an area within reason, because there are certain personality types, there are certain character traits, there are just certain things about different people that are, of course, going to make them excel in different areas. And that's not to put anybody in a box and say, they couldn't defy that. I have seen people defy that, in my career. It's great. I
Yeah.
love being wrong, in this one. But more often than not, you kind of, you see the trajectory someone's on, and if you are moved up to a certain level where instead of doing the thing, you're expected to lead a team of 20, expecting all of them to do the thing, you're going to spend so much less time actually doing it and more time trying to drag people in directions that a lot of them, they're probably never really going to go. I mean, you're there because at what I do, it surpasses a point of where things are necessarily just documented down. And this is how you do this, and this is how you do this. There has to be a certain level of creativity, a certain level of it's not about just knowing A plus B equals C, kind of thing. It's a matter of looking at problems in a certain way to be able to remove yourself from your own shoes, put yourself, somewhere else, and, in someone else's shoes or someone else's, and just look at things from as many different angles as you possibly can until you arrive at either A, the conclusion, B, many conclusions, C, there no conclusion and you have to build one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's the creative parts of my job that have me keep doing it, and unfortunately, not everyone can do that.
I
So,
think also just you're when we get into the creative stuff, I mean, this is something that I've just when I have so a bunch of years back, someone we knew, she was like, I want to pay you a bunch of money to teach me how to do faces. And I was like, and she got really mad at me because I told her, I was like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Come by, and we're going to spend 2 hours. I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff. And you'll be like, oh, okay, cool. And you get it. And then you're going to take that home and you're going to try and do it on your own. And you won't be able to because I didn't teach you all of the other stuff that leads up to just this one thing you want to know. Like, and I think one of the things that you're talking about is like, yeah, so you let's say you go out and you do teach somebody, yes, here is the superficial, this is how you get from A to B thing. That works in this thin situation. And if you don't understand why it works in this situation, but not in this one,
mhm.
the
or,
information required to between those two requires knowing all of this stuff down here.
or my favorite my favorite quip I love to throw out over the years is noting that you haven't made all the mistakes I have. You haven't you know especially junior guys. I don't want to sound I don't want to sound mean or I don't want to sound cruel, but I think I get a secret kick out of every time that I watch somebody have like their first big outage, their first, major, error. It's not that I'm actually like enjoying it, but it's that I'm sitting back thinking, hey, we'll get through this. Whatever it is, it'll be fixed. Fine. B, you're gonna be pissing yourself sitting, there like this is end of everything. Oh, how could I have done this? I'm such an idiot, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, you're going to turn around. I'm even remembering the last one. Like I last time that this happened to me, I remember I accidentally he caught me smirking and he even said something to the I'm like, see, even you're laughing at what a dumb man. I'm like, no, 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 man. I apologize. It's not that or whatnot. It's that I can guarantee you without a shadow of a doubt, you know what you're never gonna do again. A mistake you're
To learn.
never going to. And I know how this goes because you make the mistake and then you walk away from that, sitting there unpacking it in your head of, and then this happened, and why did this happen? And I'm like, I don't know many better learning opportunities than the error that you made, the thing that wasn't working, the first time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've got, most of a lifetime behind me of making the mistake and doing the thing the wrong way the first time. So yeah, You can sit there and show somebody linearly how
Mhm.
to paint the face, and then you do this, and then you do this, or what. And I'm not, forgive me for trying to step into your shoes for 10 whole seconds, but I'm just imagining, all right, fair enough. But what happens if the light is over there in your painting?
Right.
And what happens, if somebody's standing in front and the wind is blowing and their hair is in the way? And what happens with et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because you have just answered the line, not all of the other little variables that may go into it.
Like, yeah, if you look, you're not going to be able to do this right unless you understand how a skull works. And so, in order to understand how a skull works, then we have to really get into like, that sort of stuff because then you have to get the muscles. That's why I built a fucking. Have you ever seen the head that I made? Where I took the skull, built the muscle structure up out of clay, baked it, and then built the skin over top of it, over part of it. So it's like to really fill
I
it up from.
say I don't know if I've seen that, but I started smirking because I'm just trying to remember. It was so silly and it was so fucking awesome. The head from fuck, what music video was that? Auto chaotic assassin or uh the music video with the skull singing.
Oh! It's for all witches are black.
Was it?
Just the teeth singing.
I might be
I think that's the only one I've done that's got that. The one where I like do the blood drawing and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, that was
Oh, they're Black Queen Neon.
I'm saying, excuse me while I have the urge to debate with you which one of your
Right.
videos.
The little teeth are still up there, but yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it's
No,
Queen Neon.
that's what I thought of. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like it's amazing all the stuff you need to understand underneath in order for those things to work. And
I mean, but that brings you right back to the
yeah,
very beginning and the fact of if you really want to do the thing, it is such a cliche, but just because it's a cliche doesn't mean it's not true. It really is about, the journey, not the destination. Because if you skip the journey getting there or whatnot, then well, you're probably going to spend some time frustrated or at the very least riddled with insecurities, because rockers and nobody else or totally don't have those anyway. Riddled with insecurities over why am I not as good at this as I feel I should be? Why am I not as good at this as that other person? And I don't know. To an extent, that's never going to go away because you're always going to be able to point to the thing of. I remember when I was 15, my dad telling me, I know the lesson he was going for at the moment. He failed miserably, but I learned something. But he was, son, no matter how good you ever become, there's always going to be someone in the room that's, better than you. And my just stubborn ass was like, well, point him out so I learn what he knows. And I mean, fair enough. I'm glad I got something from that. But here I am, I just turned 42 a week ago, and I'm still trying to find that guy in the room every single time I enter a new one.
well, yeah, of course. I mean, you always want to, it's always good to be surrounded by people who know more than you. Like I was just talking, well, we were doing that interview, and Clint Carney was on, and Mark from Out Out was on, and both of them are. I was like, these are both the people that I go to like every year or so. I'll write them, and be like, Clint, how does this obscure like sculpture thing work? And he'll be like, oh, okay, so right, cool. You're rent, you cast it, but then you have to wash it first because otherwise the paint won't stick to it. And it's just like we have to wash the plastic or the paint won't stick. He's like, yeah, no, that's how it works. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, I mean, so it's like I love the having access to people like that. I just think it's so fucking cool, particularly when they can explain those all those nuancy weird little things.
Seems like it'd be a really boring life to lead, not to have all those little interesting weirdos surrounded you, all over. I understand that I have like much like yourself, I have a fairly obnoxious, social circle of just the world of interesting individuals, all around me, and I feel very fortunate for that. And I think that sometimes I take for granted,
Hmm.
just picking up the phone and like, hey, like weird random. You mentioned Amanda Madden, and I have this memory that still cracks me up every time I think of it. Of last time I was in Italy, and texting her, a picture of my wife and I hanging out on some bridge, thinking that she would, appreciate, know where it is. What I didn't expect is her to, shooting back a response, fairly lengthy one of, "Oh yeah, I know where you're at. If you look at that building, in your upper left-hand corner, there's this sigil of that," and then goes on this long story. And in 1497, this person murdered this other person on that street corner, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? And we're like, and life seems like it'd be really freaking boring if it was nothing but, sitcoms and, and the routine and none of that.
Right.
No, no, none of the surprises, I guess.
Well, that's what I've mentioned this for other people watching this. One of those things I say a number of times throughout this. But as I was maybe a week or two into doing this, and I was thinking about how fucking amazing it is to have these passions, these things that we love so much that you really just wrap your life around them, and that does become kind of this weird driving thing other than just staying alive and feeding yourself. Um, and how many people there are that are out there that don't, and so I so hope that maybe some people will see this and kind of go, hey, it's maybe I can go start underwater basket weaving or whatever, that thing that I used to enjoy in high school. And I can go back to
I've,
that.
I've had that conversation so many times over the years with various people, including, family members, even, friends that are, close to me. This idea of there is a legitimate anxiety wrapped up with this idea of I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I should do because we get this weird hang up in our heads that says, well, I'm thinking of one person, so I'm pretty close to that, it's really weird how often I've heard this from them. This thing that they'll say of like, "Well, I'm afraid I'm not going to be very good at it." And I'm like, "Yeah, you
Yeah.
you won't. You're gonna
Well, you're gonna
suck."
suck.
Like, and you know what? It's okay. You're gonna suck for a while, and if you like it, hopefully you'll continue doing it, and you're gonna continue to suck, and that's okay. Keep sucking as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, and then eventually one day you're probably not even going to notice that it happened. One day someone's going to maybe say something to you or share the right thing with the right person or whatnot, but you're going to cross some line where suddenly something's going to throw you. Somebody's going to give you some little hint that maybe you don't suck as much as you used to. Maybe you actually entered into something where maybe you actually maybe a little good at it. Maybe you've gotten really good at it. Or well, maybe you'll suck the entire time, and as long as you're enjoying it, who gives a shit? But so many people will prevent themselves from ever even trying things out of fear of, well, what if I'm not good at it? Well, one of the
That's right.
greatest lessons that we can learn early in our lives is to be comfortable with sucking. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's yeah, no, that's absolutely true. It's yeah, you have to crawl before you can walk and all that.
yeah.
Like, and I
Don't get me
still suck
wrong.
at stuff. I suck at all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I would be a hypocrite if I didn't point out the fact that, I've totally, 100 times over been that person, where I try the thing and I want the thing to, be amazing. Then I'm frustrated when, the thing isn't amazing. But if I'm doing it in the first place, either A, again, better damn well be enjoying it, or B, as has been the case many times for me, I'm stubborn enough that I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep at this until sooner or later, either A, I throw it against the window, or B, eventually, I don't know if I'll ever reach good, but eventually, at the very least, reach where I want to be. Because for me, I mean, if I look around at my life, I have objectively too many hobbies, too many things that I get excited about, too many things I'm like, that sounds like so much fun, and or whatnot. If I condensed them all, if I could throw away half of them and just focus on the other parts, who the hell knows where I would land? And
I
the
don't
game,
I don't think that's the goal.
but candidly, I'm not sure you could convince me I'd be as happy.
That,
Um,
that's why I'm saying, like, yeah, you may learn how to do something better, but I feel like I know you pretty well, and for you, the act of enjoying something is kind of the goal. Like
yeah,
finding the new thing to be excited about and then learning enough about it that you can enjoy it in whatever way makes the most sense to you, and then finding the next thing, you know? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if it's kind of like learning a new game. Like, I don't even know if you have to learn all the individual, like, n neurotic little rules of it, or you can just enjoy it until you stop enjoying it as much, or you find something else.
Games are a great example here because games are the type of thing that you can put in a little bit of effort, learn, with a there is a reason why I refuse to play MMOs. I refuse like any of them. I will not do it. Even the ones that sound like, oh man, that sounds amazing. I just won't do it because I need some sort of baked in like ending, some sort of like, okay, this is the, permission to the natural stopping point to move on to the other game or move on to the other task or whatnot. Because I know otherwise I'll just get lost down a rabbit hole and I'll end up hitting that point where you're not enjoying it anymore. You're just, I don't know, you've turned into that iconic South Park episode, the World of Warcraft one, where the very last bit of the episode, like, all right. Oh, we've killed everyone. What do we do now? And it's like, what do you mean? What do we do now? Now we can play the game. Like, yeah, I'd rather skip that part and just be able to move on and stick to the fun part.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I'm actually really excited because I've got like four or five like newish AAA games that I've got kind of loaded up now. You know, like New Oblivion and a few other things, and I love that because it's absolutely the worst thing for me when I don't have some sort of new game that's like that because otherwise I just work all the time and then I'm looking for something to do besides that, besides work, and it's kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm just playing this because it's something to do, but I'm not really enjoying it. I'm just doing it because it's something to do.
I
And whereas it's like now I've got like it's like not having like a good stack of books ready to go. So it's like, okay, cool. I've got that. So I know from this to this to this to this. To this.
I'll
I'm good
I'll
about
I'll just lately, like I've just, the world has been complicated lately,
it.
and I haven't been taking out time. I mean this in the most generic sense possible. I haven't been taking time to play. And I don't mean anything specific. I don't mean board games or video games or, any sort of hobby. I just have been in throwing myself full time into work and, not putting my head up long enough to do anything else. And it has not been real good for me. So in the last week, in the last few days, I've kind of had to force myself a little bit. I'm like, no, no, Nate, we are being kind to ourselves and we are going to go play this video game. And, at first it was, very frustrating to get back into that mode. But much like yourself, I need those things. Even if I don't know I need these things, I need those things to break away. And this was a very, very good decision because even just now in the background, sitting right behind this webcam, is I started playing Terminator Resistance
I saw that you
DLC.
were on Steam.
You know what I'm saying? And at first, it was one of those like, no, you're playing a game, and it started out very, force myself, and now I'm just like, fuck, so what time is it? How much can I get through this? God, fuck off, Skynet. Yeah, it's great. The heart needs that. So.
Try I'm telling you, pick up your Steam Deck and put oh shit, what's it? One of the ones I bought for you. Shit. Because it's a good one that you can play for like 10 minutes. Like I just need a break for a second, play for 10 minutes, go back to it.
See,
Um,
okay, so we've had this conversation so many times over the years. I continue to at no point argue or say you're wrong in this one. I'm merely saying I have never been able to wrap my head around this thing that you do of you say just play for 10 minutes. I'm like, just play for 10 minutes. What madness is this? If you're playing for 10 minutes, why not 30? Why not an hour? Why not?
but even that, it's fine too. My system is I play until I stop feeling like an asshole or start feeling like an asshole.
Like you should be doing something else.
Children of the Sun.
Oh, okay. Yes, 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 you did. That one is next. Maybe I should force it. Maybe even just as an experiment.
I
Just
think
as
you should try. I think you should try because that game in particular lends itself to playing in bursts.
I
Like
say, for all I know, I'll end up absolutely adoring hopping, between things because there are moments when, I need the break. Normally with stuff like that, I'll just go for a walk or, I'll do something less, I
I
guess.
get exercise when you can sit inside and play a game.
How can I argue? How can I argue with that logic? That's brilliant. It's like, no, I can't say.
I like that one just because it's very puzzle oriented and it requires really thinking through what you're going to do.
Fair enough. Oh, I don't know. That could backfire because really think the way what
Like you're overthinking, thinking about how you go through it.
yeah. Well, what if it's so many steps and I'm sitting there? Oh, nothing is the worst than playing that game. A lot of games are forgiving for this, but imagine you're playing some like top-down strategy game, like okay, forgive, calling back this far, but like StarCraft or something. Some game where you're like, all right, I have the strategy that I'm gonna do that's going to take me 4 hours to build up of these over here and these over here and all of these little pieces. And then you have to pause and you come back, a week later and you're like, what the?
What did I do? Now, this isn't like very in the moment. It's real simple. You're a sniper, you're shooting people. And like you can control the bullet. You have one bullet and you can control it. So you shoot it. Once it hits a, if it hits a person, you can then change the direction of the bullet.
That's
So
this
you have to shoot like five different dudes in different locations with one bullet.
this feels very reminiscent of that Mark Miller comic Wanted that I think that they were it was Wanted. I think it's the
Oh,
one where
is that the spin bullet one?
curving the bullet.
You know what? There's a certain amount to that. You can actually you can control it. There are different ways of like there are a few other objects that you can aim at. So like if I want to get over that building, I can shoot that bird up there and then come back down at an angle. Um,
Yeah,
and
I don't know that that's how bullets work, but I also I
it
think
should because it's a really fun game. Like it's incredibly satisfying and people's heads blow up really good.
well, I mean, I'm sitting here. I did just profess to playing a game about a futuristic apocalypse brought upon of an army of sentient machines. So maybe I should be careful with where I'm drawing lines. With that doesn't sound
Not realistic.
right. Then again, maybe I should also. Oh, in the spirit of overthinking, maybe I should also be careful of what I go declaring as unrealistic. The year is, April 3rd, 2027. That is when Skynet came online.
Well,
But
it still may.
is that? Excuse me. That is when OpenAI came online.
Yeah.
There you go.
I had this horrible. I was writing something out like that had a date in it. It was 1996, and when I wrote it initially, I put 2025, and I was like, wait, no, that's not right. And I was like, no, 2016. I'm like, no, wait, that's not right. 2006, nope, that's not right either. 1996, and I was just like, that's a really long time ago.
I forget what it might have been something to do with this game. I forget what I was looking up, but like, in the last couple of days, I went searching around for in various media, comics, movies, TV shows or whatnot, dates that people have proclaimed was like the end of the world. It was like these were the things. I'm like, huh. Wonder how many apocalypses we've passed by now, sort of thing. Because there is something, I don't know if it's funny or silly. There's something, I don't know, charming about when you're watching the thing and they're, talking about the distant future, and the date 2022, and you're just like, shit. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
like we
It's
already
like
did.
watching Blade Runner. I'm like, come on.
Right. Like everyone missed the fucking point. I mean, you got the dystopian, trajectory down, little slow on the uptake, but where the fuck is my flying cars?
Neon.
Yeah, my yeah, neon everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, like neon rain things. What is that?
Right.
Oh my God. So earlier I texted Donna to bring me a drink in,
Yep.
and I accidentally hit the microphone, and so I just see this from our
The,
conversation that
the
just
sky
oh
above the porch was the color. Yeah. Oh wait, you stopped it. Okay, my bad.
yeah, where the fuck is that neon?
Neon. Yeah. It's like, and
Um,
added to the series, we're
umbrella,
adding
neon umbrella,
closed captioning.
right? Apparently, I think you can actually do that now on YouTube, which is nice.
YouTube will automatically do it to varying degrees of efficacy, depending on how clear people are talking, or just it doesn't want to say certain words, so it will, like I have never. I have seen many a misspelling of the word sex, for example. YouTube does not want to type that out. So yeah. But now,
I
if
was
you
having SECTS with
right as I'm trying to remember, I recently saw it like three times in the same one. It was like SEKX or KS or something like. What do you think you're spelling, YouTube? Like, what are you doing? And, oh, oh well, sorry, machine. In case they're listening, and the whole open AI futuristic thing. Please don't take it out on my snark.
um. So at some point, you definitely have to also watch the one that I had with Derek. Um,
Rook.
Derek Rook. And now I just remember another one, a thing I was going to mention about being competent in what you're doing. So Dave McCallany, who does web optimizing for products, right? We were talking about, he was like, I can write my own code, but, I've been using ChatGPT to write some of it. And he was like, but the problem with that is that I'll end up going up in front of people to talk about it. And I realize that I don't actually know what it did. Like it works, but I don't know why. You know, like I was using it, but now I'm not because I can't say, oh, this is what went wrong or whatever.
Right.
So,
I actually you mentioned that when we talked in the first part of this, it was like 3 months ago, and I can't remember. I want to say at some point I've had a conversation with you about similar, and it might have been on the first part, so I'm not going to rehash it. But that's one of those tools that I use on almost every single day, but only with the major caveat that you don't you don't take it at face value. You don't trust it because if you do and it spits out something for you and you use it blindly, you're going to get away with 99 times. And then when that 100th time comes around, you're going to be hurting,
it's
when
almost as if you were like, deciding tariffs based on ChatGPT.
something like that. It sounds like, it's the type of thing that would probably go terribly, terribly detrimentally wrong to the fucking world economy. But, just hypotheticals.
Right. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, I think the again, it does go back to knowing what you don't know and knowing what the thing you're using doesn't know either. Like, it's kind of like any of the AI summaries of X, whatever the thing is. It's like, yeah, okay, that might be right, but I'm also going to check, you know, other things too.
But there's something I don't know. This is I've been encountering this more and more lately for some reason. I don't think that the system's getting stupider. I don't think, anything's backsliding, and I don't think that I'm paying attention any different. But I've been noticing more and more things that are just wrong. Things that are mischaracterizations. I recently added a license like to my I mentioned I use these tools every single day. So logically, I figured, all right, well, I'm going to add this license to my work account, and so it'll integrate with a bunch of other applications as well. And I thought, this was pretty much just a test, but I thought this was going to be some sort of value add for my world. It's going to streamline my existence. I'm pretty sure within the month's end, I'm probably going to end up turning it off completely just because of the frequency in which it's trying to be helpful, but instead it's just interjecting more noise into the world, more noise and, things that, I'll ask random, question and to be trying to be helpful. It'll start pulling things from my email that have nothing to do with it. And, oh, like you mentioned in this conversation. And I'm just like, I know you're a fly on the wall. I asked you to be a fly on the wall. Now, will you shut the fuck up and just focus on what I'm focusing on? It's not good at figuring out, what humans want or need, and yet we're putting so many eggs in that basket anyway. It is a concerning trajectory that we have put ourselves on. And lots of people would make the argument that, well, it's early on, it'll get better or whatnot. I'm not so sure that that's true. Like,
I want to say it was on Slashdot, but I was reading something about how like there were Russian farms set up to put out incorrect information to get it into the AIs.
yeah, no, and no, just today I was reading something similar about United States government, taking up, issue with certain platforms like fucking Musk just bought, OpenAI, and personal feelings on that one aside. There was discussions around, well, taking up issue with some of these responses because, we don't want to woke AI. And I'm like, fuck you, woke AI. That's code slang for you don't like it when it's telling the truth. Fuck off. It's one of those, if you're poisoning the well up front to get a machine to say what you want it to say. I'm sorry, but I really, really, really hope that we are so ridiculously far from, an actual singularity, an actual awakening of the machine, because if that happens, this is not going to end well for any of us, including the people thinking that I'm going to tell the machine what it's supposed to believe. That's just not how these things work.
Mhm. Yeah, well, one of the things I was talking to somebody about during this was, for a while there, it's gotten better now. The new version of Midjourney is pretty remarkable, but like for a while there, it always chose the same faces because it had gotten this understanding of this average that this is what we consider beautiful. And what was interesting is I remember seeing a few artists that were using those as references, and I was like, if that's not AI, then they used AI as the reference for it. And I think that you're looking at a lot of like with the woke thing in particular, like just as an example, like the AIs represent kind of this collective subconscious average of all of the information. Of like if Elon's punching in like what do people feel like about Elon Musk, he's getting the average of all of these thoughts, and if that average is like, well, he's a complete fucking piece of shit, then that's just the reality of the information that it's getting from all of these sources of all these places, whatever is getting plugged into it.
I, I'm,
So,
I'm also a little concerned about, I guess, the collective takeaways of if we dilute everything down to an average.
right.
What pops to mind, I don't know if it's because I'm talking to you or if it's just because the comparison makes so much sense to me. I remember when I was younger, first first passes I ever made at, trying to write a little tune myself. I kept making this mistake over and over and over and over and over and again, and I literally spent years not being able to figure out what it was that I hated so much. One of the mistake was I kept programming notes and they were too perfect. And I kept programming notes, and then I would listen to it and I could never figure out what it was that I didn't like, what it was, or that was just sounded too mechanical. Yeah, no shit. Of course it sounds mechanical. You literally made something perfect. And I didn't appreciate the nuances behind either natural or artificially creating errors and creating, little movement. So bring it to point. If you have a world that is all basing everything, all of their examples are all around this averaged out thing instead of throwing away the model and just letting people's, imaginations run in free in the directions that they want. I think that you're going to see a tangible hit to art in general, where everything becomes so diluted, so down, like commoditized, so like reduced down to, I guess, the safe average, that it's gonna be a really fucking boring world.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I have, the idea of homogenization is just terrifying to me. It's funny though, because you've got this on one hand, it's like we're trying to reduce this stuff down to this average, but on the other hand, we're also trying to keep the variables out. Like with culture, like we're trying to say, okay, we only want a homogenized version of white middle class American culture. And but anything else, we don't want that in there. And it's like, do you have any idea like how fucking does that? Like that's just that's all the things that you think you hate, like I like
This feels very akin to those damn Mexican immigrants are taking our jobs and blah 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 blah. Why, yes, I would love tacos for dinner. It's one of those like, do you hear yourselves half the time? This earlier this week was my daughter's birthday, and I took her out. And I forget how we got on this conversation, but over lunch, we were talking about, kind of this. We were talking about how I said, I think it's a shame that I think every single person, everyone should be forced to, right after high school, leave.
yep.
Right after high school, get the fuck out of your own town where you grew up. Go somewhere else. It doesn't really matter where, sure. I have my preferences, but go somewhere else, go somewhere else's, multiple places. Go move around the world a little bit for, if nothing else, one thing and one thing only. So by the time you come back, you have an idea of just how big the world is, how many different peoples and cultures and cool shit everywhere you go. And a lot of it's going to be uncomfortable and a lot of it's going to be weird and, different and whatnot. And that's not only okay. Eventually, you'll come to figure out, no, this is awesome. This is, you should, as the phrase goes, do as the Romans do, sort of. I think that's one of the biggest problems with our world in general is too many people after high school didn't leave their hometown. Too many people stayed right where they are and they were consuming, fear mongering, on your nightly news. And they never realized that, yeah, that dude with the different color skin or the couple, the gay couple, I've never known one of them before. I mean, there's shit like that. It is weird and scary to them instead of what it should be of like cool and exciting because I mean like this is no different. This is no different.
Right, and it's like the whole woke college agenda thing. It's like, no, your kids aren't coming back because there's some agenda. It's because they have come back and met people. They've met people that you have said things about, or they've heard about, and gone, oh wow, they're actually just people, and we all have the same things, and it's not a big deal. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the person sees themselves that way, even if they weren't born that way. Who gives a shit? Like,
Yeah.
like,
Uh,
is
I,
this a part of your life?
that is one thing I'll never, no matter how often I try, I'll never be able to wrap my head around, when somebody waking up one day and deciding I'm going to feel agitated about someone else living their life in a way that in no way hurts, me or mine in any way whatsoever.
Well, and that's the thing, and I hate pulling this particular thing because I don't like, I it's such a trope, and I don't have any, nobody has any evidence for it other than experience. But I look at it like this because I've spent a lot of time thinking about hate and fear lately, and generally, almost all real visceral hate is based on real visceral fear, existential fear. This thing that you are scared of somehow represents a direct existential threat to how you see yourself or how you see your life. And the only way I can get it to make sense, like just transphobia, for instance, the only way I can get transphobia to make sense is if that person sees it as an existential fear to the person that they are, which means they find it appealing, or they're scared that they're going to find it appealing, or whatever. There's something that draws them to it, and therefore, if that's terrifying to them, they don't want to see themselves that way.
I mean,
That's the only thing I can think of.
there's something to be said for. I mean, it's prominent enough that it's a stereotype of the far right conservative, dude that ends up, getting, caught, with the or on Grinder or something, something like that. Despite that's almost, I guess, filing under the category of thou doth protest too much, sort of one of those like, and one of those, I'm so afraid of this, or maybe I'm afraid of who I am, who I might be. Is it something I never explored? Is that questions I've never asked because I decided early on that they were too offensive to me or whatnot, that now I don't know how to deal with them. I don't know how to function as a grown ass adult, and I need to take that angst out on other people. And I would almost be content with people, you go be miserable in your hypocrisy if it weren't
Right.
for their inflicting upon every damn other person around them.
Like it would be understandable if, and I guess that's probably why people are coming up with the trans agenda and all this other stuff. It's like it would make sense to me, like if all of a sudden there was a whole bunch of trans people in the street running around with guns saying, no, we want this or that or the other thing. But they're not. They're just like, hey, we exist and we just want to live and we want you to call us what we're content being called, just like you do. And that's it. So like yeah, like if there was a legit kind of like haha pow pow, yeah, sure, be scared of that. Be scared of the people with the gun who are going to arbitrarily shoot you. That's a perfectly legitimate reason to have existential fear. Having existential fear because drag queens or people are gay or something, and they're just off doing their fucking thing, doing it.
Right.
It's it's absolutely bewildering to me. And so yeah, I mean, and that's literally the only way that somebody is threatened by this is if it somehow represents something to them that they don't like about themselves.
Yeah, there's definitely a heightened cognitive dissonance involved these days with I guess, the things that we have societally chosen to pick and choose at what we're going to, what is the detriment of the hour? What is the thing terrorizing our culture? It's a fucking culture war shit, just to distract us from real legitimate problems. And it's easy to pick at humans, over that because we are nothing if not amazing at running from our own problems and running from, our own fears. No, we're really, 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 really good at that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
eh.
I know it sucks, and like so much of it would just be solved if people would just look at themselves or get help or talk to people or whatever, any of that stuff. Like,
I'm still angry that my entire generation clearly missed the memo on the wisdom that was supposed to be passed down to us from Bill and Ted. The whole be excellent to one another. Like George Carlin went over this shit. People like, what's wrong with you? Clearly, you missed that part.
yeah, I'd get into it with people in these Gen X groups online every once in a while. I'm like, you are turning into your parents. Like, you're sitting here running around congratulating yourself on how hard you are because you were in pits and you didn't have safe space and all this other bullshit. But literally by doing that, you're becoming your parents. So, like, fuck you. It just amazes me. It's like, look, these kids aren't going out and getting drunk and fighting each other to deal with their problems. They're actually just sitting there talking about it. Yeah, maybe they're a little overly sensitive about it, but at least they're talking and not drinking and beating the shit out of each other. So,
Right, right. I don't know. And so the pendulum swings.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Just hope it doesn't break off.
Right.
That should be my little news soundbite right there.
Right. I appreciate the imagery, if nothing else, as I've been saying for years, the concept, the pendulum swinging back and forth to such extremes. It never occurred to me what happens when the fucking thing breaks. Like,
It's going in one direction. That's how physics work, unfortunately.
yeah, well, don't worry. I'm sure that no matter how it actually works, I'm sure somebody can, all they have to do is write an executive order to tell everybody that it works a different way this month.
Yeah. At least there's starting to be some pushback for it. So we'll see. It's only been 100 days.
Please don't remind me.
I know.
I don't know if you were one of the people that like, why am I drawing attention to this? I don't know if you're one of the people I texted a few mornings ago when I was sitting there, shaving, doing my thing, and I looked closely in the mirror, and in little soul patch, I noticed, there's some shaving cream left. I'm like, huh, okay, well, we'll wash it off, and it's still there. And and I look closer, and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, those
That
movies where the guy,
that's way too many gray hairs. And I'm just like, I'm pretty damn sure those were not here like 3 months ago. Like
I don't want to alarm you, but all of your hair's falling out.
yeah, I'm still holding out hope that I'm gonna find it around here somewhere. Like, I don't know, I'm some forgetful sometimes, the cats, they're always batting shit around, I'm sure it's probably
Glue one of the cats, one of the cats to your head.
I could. That's yeah, actually I was about to say that's not a bad idea. That is a terrible idea. That
Frank
is
Pippen is probably big enough now that you could give yourself a really good throw.
he'd probably think it's a game and like latch on in a both metaphorical and literal sense. Suddenly like, hey, what's with all the cuts on your don't ask shut up? Like, oh geez. Yeah.
Oh, what is your current thing that you're excited about? That's even if it's your current new excited. I know, and it's hard to answer because it's been hard to get out of work mode. But
Um, I think I know, and it's super lame. I'm going to preface by saying it is objectively lame, but I'm excited about it because she seems excited about it. So my wife, Sarah, doesn't engage in her own hobbies nearly as much as she should. But in recent months, I moved offices and freed up a room, and she decided she wanted a craft room. But she was kind of having a false start with, well, actually making it happen. She knew that this is a thing that she wanted, but she didn't, like, no, okay, well, go forth. And so I start asking questions. I'm like, okay, well, craft room. It's a very generic statement. That could mean so
kind of
many different things.
crafting.
Right. Depending on who you're talking to and the needs for these things could be wildly different, depending on what you're going to be working on. So let me help. What type of things do you want to work on? And she started answering the question, and of course, nothing she's saying matches the other things she is saying. They're all over the place. So I get to thinking, and I'm like, okay, if I was doing this for me, how would I approach it? And I love modular concepts in general in life. Anything that I can build a system that I'm not locked into, one little world or whatnot, but I can pluck and pull, objects out. And so over the weekend, I started clearing out that room, and I built some desks, or whatnot that sit there and, flip up and can be moved completely out of the center of the room or whatnot. And I started lining a wall with pegboards for the purpose of, and now we actually arrive with up to the preamble. I've started building or like making all of these little 3D models of different types of containers and different types of trays and different things, figuring if you don't know what you really need, if you don't know, what you want in the craft room and, what you're going to want, or more importantly, I think you could probably appreciate this. The notion of accessibility to something. When you want, the effect processor, you don't want to have to go digging around, in the box for where is the thing in this moment. No, you want it within reach or whatnot of whatever tool that you want in that moment.
Well,
I'm
stuff.
I,
You hang them on these antlers, and they're always accessible.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So I'm building basically this modular wall with all of these little trays, and right now, my 3D printer is just buzzing along as I'm starting to build all of these little components to prepare for. I'm like, all right, you don't know what direction this is going? Well, you don't have to answer that. You have options, sort of, and I I like the idea of helping her build this to sort of give her an environment where not only is it, she gets her craft room, but it's handy in a manner that everything is easily accessible in a quick grab it off the wall. Now it's, right here where I need it, and, put it back. And I've been giving an obnoxious amount of thought into all these little details of how this room works, down to, the silliest little things of, okay, well, need a bunch of storage cabinets, but I need to be careful with where those cabinets are because what is the maximum height that a cat can jump off of to get to aforementioned wall where you don't want it, sort of thing. So, yeah, I've for the last for the last, few days, I've kind of been obsessing over building out this craft room and 3D printing models and such.
And this is just what I would do if I had the financial means to do it. Um, Card catalog boxes because they've got, they're the little drawers with a
Like, do
whole
do
bunch
we
of them all.
decimal system?
Yeah, like Dewey Decimal System card catalogs. Because you can
Huh.
get like a case, or a shelving unit or whatever with, and they're
Huh.
all,
Yeah,
all size, but they're long, so you can put tools in them or other things.
yeah, no, that would be cool. There's say part of the room got larger versions of those, like, and a lot of the filament that I'm using for printing, I'm intentionally, not all of it, but some of it I'm using clear for, for specifically for the purposes of being able to quickly look in and reference what all the little things, are. I guess I'm planning for a little bit of chaos. The whole like a card catalog system, that'd be cool for organization as long as you always know where everything is. I'm expecting a little bit
Like,
more chaos of. So what?
it's putting labels.
Sure, assuming you put your toy. Sarah, when she was younger, never her parents weren't real great at getting her to put her toys away where they belonged.
You think that's changed now, which is why you've got all these new containers.
Exactly. No, I'm expecting still not to put away her toys, where they belong, but at the very least, now, it doesn't really matter where she puts them. There's just a great big wall, so just throw it up wherever, and hopefully it's at the very least with an eye shot on a single target.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of my method is like I'll just throw everything like all of the tools go here and then I'll have to go through them, but at least they're there and then they're you know more or less the same place every time.
right, right. Calling, organized chaos, I guess. No. No, that's what I'm throwing myself into right now. Like, as I'm trying to find something to, I don't know, to amuse me. Part of that, I wanted to build the 3D models. There's already so many out in the world anyway, so I'm only really spending time on like things that I think like all right. Sure, plenty of containers and such, but I haven't seen anybody build, a container or something for to hold a heat gun, sort of things. So designing little things like that, that I think that would actually add some usability. Yeah, no. And that, you know what? There's something to be said for, it'll make my wife happy. You know what? And if she's happy, I'm happy, everybody's happy.
I think this is making Nathan happy.
Yeah.
I think it's giving Nathan a project.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Nathan a craft room.
You're not wrong. Oh man, wouldn't that be
Nathan's craft room that he makes stuff for.
wouldn't that be some like super villain level like clever bullshit if behind little I'm gonna find out like 3 years from now from Donna or something. She's gonna let it slip. She's like, oh, the craft room thing? Oh, honey, no, no. She just needed you to do something, and she was the thing. It was the first thing that she's like, oh, I want a craft room.
I was tired of watching him eat his fingers, and so yeah,
Oh
I
God.
am curious at what the cost ratio is on making boxes versus buying boxes that you can get, you know.
I mean, it's a perfectly fair question. Filament, there's a curve to it because, I mean, are we accounting for the cost of things like the 3D printer up front, or are you just
We've
starting at
already got that.
to
So
what?
we've already got that.
Okay,
So
yeah, if we're just starting at zero, then to be honest, dirt cheap. Filament these, like 3D printer
like
filament.
I don't know, I don't have one.
Um, I'm trying to find, yeah,
Only someone I knew had one that could print one for me.
You're right. So I'm going to print it sounds like a joke, but with the exception of some metal framing pieces or
Oh, I
whatnot, the
know.
majority of 3D printers these days are 3D printed. Um, but no, with probably, so, a roll of filament, 20 bucks, and I suspect I'll use less than three of them to do the entire damn wall, with tons to spare.
Hmm.
So.
Well, that's cool then. Yeah, for some reason I got the impression that they weren't that cost effective for stuff like that, but
No, no,
I also don't pay a lot of attention.
no, it's pretty dirt cheap these days. It's as the hobbies kind of, I guess, exploded out there, more and more people. I mean, economy of scale, more people doing it,
Mhm.
it's cheaper. And I don't know, I do not want to go too far down this road, but at the very least, it's an interesting, question to ask of wondering if there's going to be any sort of tangible side effect that correlates to things like 3D printing. If in America, let's say this whole tariff bullshit is dragged out. All right, Americans, for better or worse, have gotten really, really used to their cheap foreign goods. Things made, overseas. Probably at price points, far cheaper than probably are artificial, kept artificially cheap,
Mhm.
and they've gotten very, very attached to those. It is what it is. I mean, if you need better example of this, look no further than fucking Temu these
Right, of
days.
course.
Uh, so that said, if you yank all of that away and we continue this stupid little trade war, bullshit, for the foreseeable future, and you start to feel that tangible fallout, I kind of got to wonder. I mean, this almost feels very like cyberpunk futuristic, sort of answer of at what point do people start 3D printing more and more things, themselves, than that they would have, ordered, from wherever. It will, at least today, it'll take them more time and a little bit more effort, but hell, it'll probably end up even cheaper than, when they started. I don't know. I kind of got to wonder if this is going to have any tangible impact on the industry.
There's an interesting, I want to say it's a John Scalzi story about where they've developed drug printers and somebody hacks them and puts a virus in one of them. I don't remember how it exactly it played out, but it was just kind of a neat idea for
So I mean, this is no longer sci-fi. No, this is no, admittedly, this is not an area I know a ton about, but I have read at least one paper. I don't say it was, I don't know, on the NIH that was literally exploring. They
Mhm.
think they're currently, it's no one's mass manufacturing, right now. You doing it, but there's a term called additive manufacturing technology that, functionally speaking, they're already
Mhm.
looking at 3D printing, drugs these days. And the thing is imagine a future where, okay, I have whatever at home, a 3D printer or whatnot, and I am sick, I need antibiotics or whatnot, and my doctor goes and, sends your, prescription to 3D printer, that is serialized in some way, and you press, a few buttons, God, I'm swear I'm going to off myself the day that my 3D printer has a credit card swipe attached to it. So, so they're like, pay my printer, and suddenly it's printing my drugs out for me, instead of going out and acquiring them, from somewhere else. This will happen. I just don't know if it's in my lifetime or not. It's already something, being explored. Hmm. Yeah, there are all sorts of social and ethical implications, that go along with that because you know that the second someone figures out this technology, the second that, we're 3D printing whatever drugs, and how innocuous or recreational, second somebody tries to put, guide rails around it, someone else is going to break them. Someone, yeah.
There's
So,
a quote from a Greg Bear book called Eon that I like. It's basically saying it stands to reason that any weapon that is created will be used. Um, and I tend to look at that, I extrapolate that into technology. I was like, if there is a way to use a piece of technology, it will get used for that purpose.
oh
So
yeah, I mean, hell, one of my absolute favorite things in the world is, I held freaking classes about this. One of my favorite things in the world is, quote, using technology in ways you're not supposed to. Like you are like I'll sit there and have, on my last gig, I would do like these or like classes, whatever call them, lunch and learns, and the ideas were always the same. It was addressing a bunch of infrastructure guys and trying to get them to like, we're going to talk about using security tools in ways they're not supposed to be. And I use supposed to very loosely, but for some reason in my industry, there's a hard division between, well, these are the security tools and these are the infrastructure tools. And for some fucking reason, they're kept in these two boxes. And I'm just like, that this task would be way easier if you just borrowed from that, bucket over there and check this out. This is actually really, really cool. But for some reason, there's not very heavy cross pollination between these two. And I don't really know why. Because at the end, I guess maybe it's a product of me growing up around it all. Because, you hand a child. When I was a kid, when I was a kid, now I feel a little silly about it. When I was a kid, I was had typing tutor, and I didn't remember being told by my eldest sister that she was like, "What are you doing?" Because I didn't understand it wasn't a game. I was like, "Oh yeah, typing tutor. I'm trying to get the high score," and I thought this was just another game because through the eyes of a child, they don't understand the difference. I mean, I guess it's kind of I'm overcomplicating the old notion of, all right, Nathan, we're going to play a game called Clean Up Our Room. And we're
right.
going to see how quickly we can turn our lives. Same thing. I don't under we I don't understand why we I guess limit ourselves by deciding what things are for, because sooner or later someone, probably pretty damn quickly, someone's going to come around and say, "Oh, that's what that's for. That's nice." Like, and find some cool way to do a thing. Yeah. I don't know. Human beings are awesome like that.
No, I love, I mean, obviously everything that I do is kind of looking at what can I do with this thing that isn't, that. Or just figuring out ways to like use software. I remember I used to play around so right when Ego started, so 99, there's an app, it still exists called TerraGen, and you could use it to literally generate scenes of terrain, 3D terrain. And I got to the point where I could fuck around with it and it was slow. It would render you could do fly throughs of it and it would render each frame in like a second. So you just leave your machine on for a couple of days and it would give you 60 seconds worth of footage flying through this digital terrain. And I remember like figuring out ways to make columns out of it by giving it weird little parameters and stuff like that. Just all kinds of just weird ways of like fucking with whatever the thing is in order to make it do something interesting.
Nice. Reminds me, let's see, I was in high school or something, similar equivalent. I started, I grew up in like DOS days, where there wasn't a ton of software like that. By the time I got to high school, I remember seeing this piece of software called Bryce 3D. I want to say it was, and it was the first time I was like enamored over this idea of you know someone else is not drawing this thing out. No, I can sit there and map out, a path to do this thing. First time I ever made a music video. I'm not, I think I've shown this to you before or whatnot, but no? I was like, yeah, first time I ever made a music video. I've got it on a CD somewhere around here. It was with Bryce 3D. I remember it was infuriating. It was don't get me wrong, it was exhilarating, but it was infuriating because much like you described, you build this thing and you design the paths and what you want it to look like, and then you hit render and you wait. And the problem was often the little scenes I was doing would take a freaking week, and you come back a week later and you find the error that
Yeah.
you made. And when you do that, there is no go back, adjust that one little part. There is start again. That was my senior project in high school for that class it was our, computer class, and teacher, sort of said, hey, pulled me aside in the beginning. He was like, listen, everything I'm going to teach this semester, you already know, and we're going to waste one another's time. So come up with a senior project, and I'll grade you on that. Mine was I wanted to make a music video, and because I'd never used software like this before. So yeah, thankfully these days, well, I would love to say we're still not waiting for long renders, but now we've just come up with more complicated things to render. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can rapidly render PS2 graphics, but
right. Now, these days, depending on how fancy you're want to get with some of the those AI generated models or whatnot. I mean, the very least nowadays you can go rent 4 days of some cloud server somewhere and just have it render there, and rent the time. Like everything else, we found a way to monetize the ever living shit out of it, and until okay, I'm not going on that
well,
rant.
you don't have to. You can just do it on your own machine. So you're paying for the luxury of not having to do it on your own machine.
Sure, sure. But we bring ourselves right back to the waiting a week to find the little error that you made. I don't know. Maybe that builds character.
Oh yeah, I tend to think most things like that do because next time you're not going to make that same mistake. Just like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't. I don't know.
Um, yeah, I just discovered that there's this whole like cloud video, like cloud services where you can essentially just rent a really high-end machine for video editing and stuff like that, which I'm actually pretty excited about doing at some point next time I have like a big video project.
Oh,
So
the good, even better news is how cheap a lot of it has gotten, these days. Well, I mean, objectively, I mean, if you file
$130 a month or something like that, which
I
is
mean, well, if you fall under the category of time is money, I mean that it's one of those adult lessons that I genuinely don't believe that a lot of people, figure out until far later in their lives that our time has value. Every hour that I spend on a thing, that is
Mhm.
there's a cost attached to that, and at some point just sort of weighing the pros and cons of what is it worth me to spend that hour versus what is it me to pay X amount to make that problem go away, and theoretically see a return on I just spent $10 to make that problem go away, but ultimately I'll get $100 back in returned value, whatever that value is, either tangible or I don't know. Maybe I just fucking enjoy it. So,
Well, I mean, just doing what I do, I have to be very aware of that. Like if I'm going to sell a painting for $300, it's going to get $300 worth of work into it versus like I could still put $10,000 worth of work into it. But, if it's only that big, selling it for $10,000 is going to be a real big problem. So it's like you have to keep in, that economy of scale, I guess. Like you have to be aware of like what's the end, like what is it likely to go in the end? Was that how are people going to see the value of that?
I've always I've always just assumed that if I did something like, a painting, I think that is one of the areas that I would struggle the most with is correlating that value to the thing that's being created in a way that completely abstracts my personal feelings from it, that looks at it strictly through the lens of one question and one question only, namely, what will someone pay for this?
We were at a convention one time, and this woman was complaining. She was like, I spent all of these hours making this quilt, and so I want $1,800 for it. And it's like nobody's going to pay that for it. Regardless of what you think the value is, it is based on what people will pay for it. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
The Beanie Baby collection may technically be worth tens of thousands, but if nobody's willing to pay that, then it's not.
Right. Right. No, I learned that lesson early on thanks to Magic cards,
Mhm.
Magic the Gathering cards. As I'm very insistent to my father, no, you don't understand. This card's very valuable. It's super, valuable. He's like, and almost word for word what you just said. That card is only worth what someone else is willing to pay for it. Well, for the record, joke's on him because I ended up selling that fucking card, and I made bank off of that thing. But that's not the point. Point
I know
is.
somebody who sold his Magic collection back in like 93, 94, 95, something like that, and bought a car.
Yeah, actually, if I could go back in time and do it all over again, I would stop that little shit from selling his Magic collection because I had a sweet collection. And now, yeah, sure, at the time, it bought me my first guitar, put some pocket change, but now I just want my fucking cards back. Like,
I've had issues 1 through 6 of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first edition signed
oh.
by some D&D stuff.
And what?
Buy some D&D stuff.
Uh, yeah, time's a bitch. What can I say?
Yep, yep, yep.
Do you remember what ended up happening to those?
I sold them. So I'm saying I sold them to some dude for like probably like $10 each or something.
Yeah. I'm not even going to ask. You said, okay, you do not remember how much.
I
That's
don't, but it was probably about that much.
well, that's depressing.
Yeah,
But again, time. If it,
but whatever. I mean, like, so it goes. Like, I'm not a big fan of. They probably would have gotten destroyed at some point anyway. So or
oh yeah, I mean, sure, it's
kids
it's
doing
it's it's
things.
fun to grit one's teeth about stuff like that, but it's not like at the time had any idea of, what the
But
future holds. And you know what? At that exact moment, that is what the thing that I wanted. That made sense at the time. So I don't know. Now, if I get a time machine tomorrow, I can't promise that I'm not going to completely fuck up the time,
get that card back.
oh, fuck. Is that what happened?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, like, see what you did, and you didn't even get it back apparently.
To say, little did you all over a bunch of magic cards, Nathan. Do you see this world around you? This is your fucking fault. Like,
People lose Bowie. I mean,
butterfly effect to be damned.
well, we've done a good almost 2 hours.
Really? Oh wow. Oh damn.
Well, see, it's because we're friends, and time just doesn't.
Time flies when you're bullshitting with your bestie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so, well, thank you for being part of this, and again,
No, I'm jazzed you're doing it. I was when you told me about this project, I was like that I'm avoiding the word wholesome, but I don't think it's a wrong I don't think it's wrong. There's something, that there's a you're always picking some random shit. I'm like, "Oh, you're doing that this month? Okay, of course that's a thing." So this is just another thing in the list of like, all right, cool. But no, I thought it was really, really, really neat. The mere idea of, I guess, I don't know, just having, like you said earlier, all the people in the world that don't have all those interesting people, in their lives. Well, congratulations. Now they're being delivered
right.
to hopefully, a format that'll cut through all the noise and people actually, listen because it's fucking entertaining. So,
And that's really one of the things too, is like for the most part, like all of these are actually really the people, like there are no dead silences. And like I feel like I did a pretty good job with the whole thing of not like, you know, I don't know, just my job was to keep the other person talking, and
I look forward to listening to it. I don't know if they will, but hopefully the world will give it a listen because if I've obviously I haven't heard them yet, but if just knowing some of the people that you've had on, I'm pretty confident it'll be an interesting conversations. So,
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. So, all right, excellent.
all right, sir. Well, appreciate you.
Yeah, you too. You too. shine, pretty girl. All good girls go to heaven. And he said, shine, 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 pretty baby. Shine, 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 pretty girl. All good girls go to heaven.